The tapestry of unexplored secrets. Mysteries have an uncanny way of capturing our imaginations and challenging everything we think we know about the past. From puzzling artifacts locked in millennia-old strata to mammoth walls constructed with near impossible precision, such enigmas compel us to ask how our ancestors achieved remarkable feats long before the advent of modern technology. These riddles of history are not mere curiosities. They reshape our understanding of time, human ingenuity, and even our spiritual or philosophical conceptions of life on Earth. Most of us learn in school that civilization developed in a predictable series of stages: stone tools, simple agriculture, then complex societies, culminating in the wonders of Greece, Rome, and beyond. Yet every so often, an extraordinary discovery is unearthed that throws these neat progressions into disarray. In this first part of our expansive journey through the unknown, we will delve into 5 astonishing puzzles. Each one highlights the complexities of ancient engineering, cryptic artifacts, and human stories preserved in unexpected ways. Perhaps they will deepen your reverence for the past or spark new speculation about how advanced or entirely different our predecessors may have been. We will take a closer look at the Phistos disk, whose curious stamped symbols have confounded linguists for over a century. Examine the so-called London hammer, a tool found locked in ancient stone and rumored by some to be hundreds of millions of years old. And gaze upon the mighty walls of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, an Inca masterpiece that defies conventional explanations of pre-Columbian architecture. Continuing forward, we will journey into the time of the Vikings to uncover the improbable marvel of the Ulfbert sword, a weapon forged in such high-quality crucible steel that it seemingly leapt ahead of medieval metallurgy by centuries. Finally, Part 1 will close with a look at the haunting skeletons at Ropkund Lake, scattered at a height of over 16,000 ft in the Himalayas. This final mystery invites us to question not just how ancient travelers died in such a remote place, but also why people from vastly different backgrounds and even distant regions would congregate in one of Earth's most unforgiving environments. We begin by recognizing that no single text or single researcher can fully unravel all these puzzles. The aim here is broader, to piece together a tapestry of unexplored secrets that reveals the breadth of human capabilities in antiquity. These stories offer clues about cultural interactions, lost knowledge, and the interplay of myth and reality. They also underscore how fragile historical evidence can be, and how easily entire chapters of our collective story might still be lying beneath desert sands, sealed in ice, or lost in the murk of a hidden lake bed. In each case, we will strive to preserve the core details of the puzzle and examine a few theories, some grounded in mainstream academia, others more speculative or fringe, that have surrounded these enigmas over the decades. By the end of this segment, you may find yourself not only enthralled by these mysteries, but also reassessing the conventional wisdom that shapes our historical timeline. There is, after all, a boundary between what we firmly accept as fact and what remains unknown. Yet it is at this edge that human curiosity truly thrives. Let us now step into the first gallery of wonders and consider the Phistos disk, a small clay artifact that has stubbornly defied every attempt at translation, yet continues to invite new minds to unlock its cryptic code. The Phistos disk. One of the most persistent riddles from the Bronze Age is the curious artifact known as the Phistos disk, discovered at the Minoan palace site of Phaistos on the island of Crete. Unearthed in 1908 by the Italian archaeologist Luigi Pernier, the disc immediately stood out as both an art object and a potential bearer of an unknown writing system. Fashioned from terracotta and measuring roughly 16 centimeters in diameter, it features 241 individual symbols carefully pressed in a spiral arrangement on both sides. These symbols, ranging from human figures and animals to abstract designs, do not correspond to any recognized script of the Minoan or Mycenaean civilizations. Nor do they match Linear A or Linear B, the best-known writing systems from Crete's ancient cultures. What sets the Phaistos disc apart is not just the perplexing nature of its glyphs, but also the method by which they were applied. Instead of being painstakingly carved by hand, the symbols were stamped using preformed seals, suggesting what some scholars call an early experiment in movable type or printing. This technique stands out in a period more commonly associated with clay tablets inscribed by stylus. Such a method indicates a sophisticated understanding of systematic character creation, which might imply the existence of a specialized workshop or scribal tradition. The disc has been tentatively dated to around 1700 BCE, placing it in the midst of the thriving Minoan civilization. However, no other example of this mysterious stamped script has been discovered, neither on Crete nor anywhere else in the Mediterranean. This isolation raises questions. Did the disc serve a ritual function so specialized that no further copies were needed? Was it part of a private or esoteric practice sealed away in a hidden context, or could it have been created by a small group of scribes or even a single craftsperson whose experimental system never became widespread? Over the years, numerous decipherment claims have emerged, many of them controversial. Proposed translations range from religious hymns to an astronomical calendar or even rudimentary genealogical records. Yet mainstream linguists remain unconvinced by these attempts due to the small sample size of text, the unknown language, and a lack of parallel inscriptions that could serve as a Rosetta Stone for comparison. Without additional finds, it is nearly impossible to confirm any single reading. Adding a layer of intrigue are suggestions that the Phaistos disc might be a hoax. Although geochemical tests confirm the clay's antiquity, skeptics highlight how easily a clever forger could contrive an ancient stamping technique. But most archaeologists accept the disc's authenticity given the thorough excavation records and the match between the disc's stratigraphic context and its proposed age. Today, the Phaistos disc remains on display at the Heraklion Archaeological Museum, symbolizing the Minoans' artistic prowess and enduring enigma. It is a testament to just how much remains unknown about the early civilizations of the Aegean Sea, and stands as a tangible reminder that even in an era of advanced technology, certain ancient secrets remain impervious to modern attempts at cracking their codes. The London Hammer. If the Phaistos disc challenges our understanding of early writing and printing, the London Hammer confronts us with a puzzle about the potential overlap between modern artifacts and archaic geological contexts. In June 1936, Max Hahn and his wife Emma were enjoying a stroll near Red Creek outside the small town of London in Texas when they spotted a curious rock with a wooden handle sticking out from it. Intrigued by this anomaly, they brought it home only to forget about it for a number of years. Eventually, their son decided to break the rock open, and to everyone's astonishment, a metal hammer head emerged looking very much like the 19th century miners' hammers common throughout America. But the real debate ignited when some observers claimed that the surrounding stone is part of a formation supposedly dating back hundreds of millions of years. Photographs of the hammer embedded in rock circulated widely, sparking wild theories. Could this be an out-of-place artifact, ou part? Proving that advanced human technology existed on Earth far earlier than mainstream science acknowledges. Or even that time travel had deposited a modern tool in a prehistoric stratum. While such ideas may ignite the imagination, they tend to clash with standard geological explanations. Critics of the extraordinary claims point out that limestone concretions can form much more quickly under the right conditions. According to this more conventional explanation, mineral-rich water could have encased a relatively modern hammer in a hardened crust, giving it the superficial appearance of an artifact millions of years old. Analyzing the hammer's composition, scientists have found it to be about 96% iron, with small traces of chlorine and sulfur, producing an alloy that, while of good quality, is not beyond the capacity of 19th century American ironworking. Even so, the narrative remains provocative. Several attempts at further testing, such as carbon dating the wooden handle, have been complicated by the owner's reported refusal to release the artifact for extensive laboratory analysis. Some accounts state that the hammer was tested at the Battelle Memorial Institute, allegedly revealing an unusual alloy. However, no official publication from Battelle ever confirmed these results. This absence of peer-reviewed data further muddies the waters. For proponents of the out-of-place artifact theory, the London hammer stands alongside objects like the Antikythera mechanism and the Baghdad battery as evidence that modern knowledge underestimates ancient or lost technological prowess. Mainstream archaeology, meanwhile, remains steadfast that while it is a curious find, no credible data supports the notion that the hammer predates the 19th century by any significant margin. In the broader debate, the London hammer illustrates how singular artifacts can become flashpoints in the ongoing conversation about human origins. In the end, the London hammer is less about proving or debunking time travel or advanced prehistory, and more about the complexities of geological processes, the thirst for sensational discoveries, and the cautionary tale of jumping to conclusions before thorough scientific analysis. Whether it is ultimately found to be a straightforward 19th century miner's tool or something far stranger, it remains a fascinating exhibit that underscores how even mundane objects can achieve legendary status when entombed in the geological record. The colossal walls of Sacsayhuaman, in stark contrast to the mystery of a single clay disc or an anomalous hammer, is the awe-inspiring grandeur of Sacsayhuaman, also spelled Sacsayhuaman, an Inca fortress or ceremonial complex located on a steep hill overlooking the ancient capital of Cusco in Peru. Erected in the 15th century during the reign of the Inca ruler Pachacuti Sacsayhuaman, is a testament to a level of engineering skill and architectural mastery that continues to astound historians, archaeologists, and tourists alike. Enormous limestone blocks, some weighing well over 100 tons, were not only quarried from miles away, but perfectly fitted into zigzagging walls that rise up to 60 ft in some sections. This colossal construction is even more remarkable given that the Incas, according to standard accounts, had neither the use of the wheel nor iron tools capable of cutting such hard stone with precision. Yet the stone blocks fit together so perfectly that not a thin blade of grass or the tip of a knife can slip between many of the joints. Even in a region prone to earthquakes, the walls remain largely intact, leading some researchers to theorize that the Incas employed advanced knowledge of geometry friction and the distribution of weight and stress. While traditional archaeology attributes the walls to purely Inca, engineering alternative views suggest that the site may be far older, dating back to a pre-Inca civilization that possessed a mastery of megalithic construction. Proponents of this idea point to certain irregularly shaped stones that appear partially vitrified or melted, hinting at the possibility of advanced heating techniques or chemical processes. Indeed, sites like Tambo Machai and Kenko in the same region display somewhat similar melted surfaces on stone, fueling speculation about unknown technologies. However, mainstream scholars typically argue that the melted look can come from natural weathering processes, repeated small-scale polishing, or indigenous stone-bashing techniques using dolerite hammers. Most conventional explanations emphasize the Incas' formidable organizational capacity, with tens of thousands of laborers employed under a system of mita rotational labor. The empire was able to accomplish architectural feats quickly, even if the specific stone-fitting methods remain partially mysterious. Beyond its architectural puzzle, Sacsayhuaman's purpose is equally a subject of debate. Early Spanish chroniclers thought it a fortress due to its fortifications and the strategic vantage point over Cusco. Yet Inca oral histories emphasize that it may also have served significant religious or ceremonial functions, particularly in relation to the solstice festivals dedicated to Inti, the sun god. The site's three massive terraced walls, arranged in a zigzag pattern, could, according to some interpretations, represent the teeth of a puma. The city of Cusco itself was allegedly laid out in the shape of this sacred feline. For visitors who walk among the immense limestone blocks, the sensation is one of encountering something that challenges our typical timeline for human capabilities. Sacsayhuaman symbolizes the pinnacle of Inca engineering and remains a powerful reminder that pre-Columbian civilizations achieved architectural feats once dismissed as impossible without modern machinery. Even with ongoing research, the fortress complex still keeps many of its secrets locked within those precisely hewn walls. The Ulfbert sword. If the Incas startled the world with their monumental stone architecture, the Vikings contributed an equally compelling enigma, so it's in the form of the Ulfbert sword. Dating between the 9th and 11th centuries, about 170 of these swords have been found in Scandinavia, parts of Europe, and even as far east as the Volga region in Russia. They bear an inscription of the word Plumweis LFBR+T, with slight variations generally inlaid with contrasting steel. This brand-like mark denotes not merely an owner's name, but potentially the signature of a master swordsmith or workshop recognized across Europe for unparalleled craftsmanship. The hallmark feature of the Ulfbert swords is the high-carbon crucible steel from which they were forged. During the medieval period, most European blades were typically made from bloomery iron, which contained impurities and varied carbon content. In contrast, the steel in authentic Ulfbert swords exhibits a remarkable purity and consistency, rivaling steels that did not become common in Europe until the Industrial Revolution centuries later. This steel was stronger, more flexible, and possessed a sharper edge qualities that would have granted a tremendous advantage in battle. Despite the advanced metallurgy, historians disagree on whether the Vikings themselves developed the technique for making crucible steel, or if they obtained the raw materials through trade along the Volga or via contact with the Middle East, where the famous Wootz steel was known to exist. It is also possible that a specialized Frankish workshop on the Rhine River mastered the forging process, exporting these prized blades to wealthy patrons across Europe. Some swords with an Ulfbert inscription, however, are of inferior quality, suggesting that forgeries or knockoffs were produced to profit from the brand's legendary reputation. The intrigue deepens when we consider how and why the technology seemingly disappeared. By the 11th century, the flow of high-grade steel appears to have been disrupted, and subsequent European swords returned to lower-quality iron or steel. A plausible explanation is that the trade routes for the raw crucible steel collapsed, or the original workshop's secret forging techniques were lost with the death of a master smith. Others propose that the decline of pagan burial practices, where swords were often interred with their warrior owners, means fewer swords were placed in graves, leaving us with a skewed impression of the timeline of Ulfbert's manufacture. The Ulfbert swords represent a confluence of mythology and reality. They were not simply weapons, but symbols of power status and extraordinary craftsmanship that traveled with Viking raiders, traders, and mercenaries to lands far from their northern origins. They make us question the assumptions about medieval technology in Europe, showcasing a mastery of steel-making that begs for deeper exploration into global trade networks, knowledge exchange, and the personal genius of unnamed artisans. As more swords come to light and modern metallurgical analysis refines our understanding, the legend of Ulfbert continues to grow, reminding us that the lines between myth and history are often drawn in steel. The skeletons at Ropkund Lake. High in the Indian Himalayas at an altitude exceeding 16,000 amperes, lies a small glacier-fed body of water known as Ropkund Lake, or the Lake of Skeletons. Discovered by a British forest ranger in 1942, the lake quickly became infamous for containing hundreds of human remains visible when the ice melts each summer. What initially appeared to be a single mass tragedy, potentially a lost army or a group of pilgrims overwhelmed by a violent hailstorm, has turned out to be far more complex. Modern analyses have overturned earlier assumptions, revealing multiple episodes of death separated by centuries, and involving people of different ancestries, even from distant parts of the Mediterranean region. Early carbon dating suggested that the remains dated to around 850 CE, lending credence to local lore about a pilgrimage that had incurred the wrath of the goddess Nanda Devi. Legend recounts that a king and his party dishonored the sacred mountains, prompting the goddess to strike them down with giant hailstones. Indeed, the first round of scientific study noted large skull fractures consistent with hail or falling rocks. For decades, this was considered the leading explanation. However, a 2019 DNA analysis published in Nature Communications challenged everything. Examining 38 skeletons, researchers identified 3 distinct genetic groups who died at Ropkund at different times. The oldest group of South Asian ancestry perished roughly between the 7th and 10th centuries. A second group carrying Eastern Mediterranean ancestry died much later, around 1800 CE. A single individual with Southeast Asian genetics also seems to have died in that same later period. No historical record explains why people from the Mediterranean would be trekking in this isolated Himalayan corridor. Equally baffling is how they met their end. The location is harsh, but the area is known mainly for local pilgrimages, raising questions about what a multinational party was doing there in the early modern era. Another layer of mystery is that many of the bodies show no signs of violent conflict. Instead, the remains appear to have been exposed to the elements left to scatter around the lake over time, with hair, skin, and clothing partially preserved by the freezing temperatures. Some theories propose that each group, centuries apart, might have been on spiritual journeys, pilgrims from varied cultural backgrounds seeking blessings at a revered Himalayan site. Others speculate about trade or exploration parties lost to sudden storms. The presence of children's remains deepens the tragedy, indicating that these were not solely military campaigns or adult expeditions. Today, Ropkund Lake is a place where science grapples with myth in an attempt to reconcile the competing narratives. The local communities still hold the site as sacred, weaving the bones into their cultural and religious tapestry. Meanwhile, climate change and increased tourism may soon alter the site, making it urgent for researchers to protect and study what remains. Ultimately, the skeletons remind us that even the world's most remote locations are not immune to human ambition, devotion, or tragedy, and that the truth behind ancient mysteries often proves stranger and more intricate than any legend. Conclusion and transition. From the cryptic symbols on the Phistos disc to the improbable context of the London hammer, from the megalithic walls of Sacsayhuaman that challenge standard engineering narratives to the advanced metallurgy of the Ulfbert swords, and finally to the haunting human puzzle at Ropkund Lake, each of these enigmas reveals the astonishing breadth of humanity's past. They illustrate how artifacts and archaeological sites can outpace our current understanding of ancient societies, leaving us pondering how and why certain skills or events emerged and occasionally vanished through the ebbs and flows of civilization. A consistent thread through these mysteries is the tension between mainstream explanations, grounded in currently accepted academic methods, and alternative interpretations that range from the slightly unconventional to the wildly speculative. In academic circles, there is an understandable preference for theories that can be rigorously tested and peer-reviewed. Yet these extraordinary finds challenge us to remain open-minded. The possibility that entire chapters of history remain undocumented should never be dismissed, especially in a world as large and varied as ours, where many archaeological sites are still unexcavated or threatened by natural and human forces. For instance, the mysteries described here highlight how quickly a discovery can shift the baseline of what we believe is chronologically possible. If an ancient culture was stamping symbols on clay discs in a method resembling movable type printing, then perhaps we must reevaluate the creative leaps made by Bronze Age peoples. If the Vikings could forge steel so pure it rivaled the industrial methods of centuries later, might there be other pockets of advanced metallurgical knowledge that rose and fell unrecorded? If countless individuals from far-flung places died at one of the world's most perilous altitudes, how many other hidden tragedies lie beneath glaciers or deserts? These questions do not necessarily undermine the foundations of mainstream archaeology or dismiss the value of rigorous scientific scrutiny. Instead, they prompt us to look deeper, to question assumptions, and to appreciate the complexity of cultural and technological evolution. In many ways, the controversies themselves, be they about the London hammer's origin or the exact method of quarrying stones for Sacsayhuaman, invite broader public engagement with archaeology and history. This engagement can lead to increased funding for excavations, better preservation initiatives, and a broader conversation that welcomes interdisciplinary perspectives from geology to linguistics to advanced imaging technology. In Part 2, we will continue this odyssey by examining a series of additional puzzling sites and artifacts spread across the globe. We will travel from the seas between India and Sri Lanka, where an ancient bridge-like structure known as Ram Setu stirs religious devotion and geological debate to the rugged coastline of Brittany, France, where the alignment of the Karnak stones underscores humanity's ancient capacity for monumental construction. The deeper we venture, the more we see that our planet, like our shared human story, is layered with wonders. By engaging with these hidden corners of history, we not only honor the memory of past cultures, but also keep alive the spirit of inquiry that drives us forward. With that, let us turn the page and step into another realm of stories that test our notions of historical possibility. Prepare yourself for more enigmas from megalithic alignments that might once have mapped the stars, to unnerving figurines whose reptilian shapes challenge how we see ourselves. Our journey into the unknown continues, beneath the sands and across the seas. In the first part of our journey, we explored a realm of human ingenuity that bridged epochs, continents, and cultural boundaries, unpacking 5 enigmas that prompt us to rewrite the familiar narratives of civilization. From an indecipherable Bronze Age artifact to an iron hammer locked in stone to colossal Inca walls, high-grade Viking steel, and perplexing Himalayan skeletons, each of these puzzles has shown us that history is anything but straightforward. Now, as we embark on Part 2, we descend deeper into cryptic vestiges that lurk beneath dunes, rivers, and even entire seas. The stories here challenge us to question how far back our architectural and mythological lineages stretch, and how readily we might have overlooked entire chapters of ancient achievement. Mysteries have a habit of hiding in plain sight. Sometimes they are concealed just below modern-day temples, as though some grand cosmic joke placed them within reach but still out of sight. Sometimes they are submerged in the middle of large bodies of water, whether it is a shallow strait between countries or a rain-lashed lake in the heart of the Midwest. But these riddles rarely remain silent forever. Eventually, curious travelers, methodical archaeologists, or even random accidents bring them to the light of day. When this happens, we are confronted not merely by old stones and inscriptions, but by the sheer breadth of human potential. In epochs we typically dismiss as primitive. Part 2 features 4 distinctive sites. First, we visit the Osirian in Abydos, Egypt, a subterranean structure that seems to predate even the most renowned temples, fueling rumors of unknown architectural lineages. Next, we delve into the lore surrounding Ram Setu, an isthmus-like formation between India and Sri Lanka that merges geology, myth, and faith. Our journey then heads to the rugged coastline of Brittany, France, to witness the Karnak stones, thousands of standing stones aligned in ways that continue to baffle archaeologists, astronomers, and dreamers alike. Finally, we examine the strange Al-Ubaid figurines of Mesopotamia clay statues with reptilian features that could point to an unusual pantheon, or if one embraces fringe, theories a connection to cryptic off-world entities. Across these 4 puzzles, we will note recurring themes. Each site or object challenges standard timelines, spurring speculation about either a lost advanced culture or an overlooked dimension of ancient technology and spirituality. Each location also boasts a cluster of theories, some grounded in scientific inquiry, others drifting into esoteric or mythic domains. In each case, the thirst for answers reveals as much about our modern psyche as it does about the ancients we seek to understand. We yearn for grand explanations for signs that the old world was filled with magic or unmatched intellect, yet we also remain tethered to the rigors of archaeology and data. Before diving into the specifics, let us remember that no single explanation can definitively solve these puzzles. The deeper truth often emerges through painstaking fieldwork, the slow layering of evidence, and the humility to admit that we may never know the full story. Still, these mysteries continue to beckon us, reminding us that exploration of the past is not merely about studying ruins. It is about rediscovering what humans have long been capable of achieving, even in times we regard as less enlightened. Bridging reflection. As we navigate from the lofty Himalayas and Viking forges to the deserts of Egypt and the coasts of South Asia, we see that the quest to understand humanity's past often blends multiple disciplines. Archaeology, geology, genetics, religion, astronomy, and mythology can all become part of a single investigation. In some of these mysteries, mainstream science offers partial solutions, for example, reinterpreting geological formations as natural phenomena that ancient peoples integrated into their cultural beliefs. In other cases, the puzzle persists because the data remain elusive or contradictory, fueling both scholarly papers and late-night documentaries alike. The sites and artifacts we will explore in this section illustrate how physical constraints such as being underwater or deeply buried beneath centuries of accumulated sediment complicate the research process. Even in technologically advanced times, excavation can be hindered by shifting politics, security issues, cultural sensitivities, or a lack of funding. When it comes to building or preserving narratives about these places, the story can veer into legend as easily as it does into science. One person's lost tomb of the gods is another's ritual well or water reservoir. The tension between these views reflects the broader tension between objective evidence and the human tendency to yearn for grandeur. Consider, for example, the Phistos disc from Part 1, an intriguing artifact that continues to defy attempts at translation. Some people interpret it strictly as a religious text, while others posit more mundane uses, or even question its authenticity. Similarly, the Sacsayhuaman fortress enthralls travelers who can only wonder how thousands of Inca workers hauled such massive stones with remarkable precision. These unresolved questions are not purely academic. They also impact the sense of identity for local communities whose heritage and cultural memory might be linked to these monuments. In Part 2, the Osirian stands out as a prime example of a site that was literally overshadowed by a larger, more celebrated temple built above it. The possibility that this structure predates the dynastic timeline of ancient Egypt challenges deep-seated assumptions about how quickly or slowly monumental architecture developed. Moving on, Ramsetu merges archaeology with the epic of the Ramayana, bridging tangible geology and intangible spiritual convictions in ways that defy simple categorization. Meanwhile, the Karnak stones highlight the interplay of land-use mythology and possibly proto-astronomical observation in prehistoric Europe. Finally, The Alubaid figurines raise the specter of deities that might appear alien by modern standards, suggesting that the boundary between the spiritual and the literal in ancient Mesopotamia may be more complex than we imagine. If Part 1 prompted you to reevaluate the historical horizon of skillful engineering and cross-cultural interaction, Part 2 might spark renewed wonder about how the threads of myth and the tangibles of stone or clay can interweave into something that perpetually eludes conclusive answers. Let us now begin by venturing to the sandy plains of Abydos, where one of Egypt's most mysterious substructures lies hidden beneath centuries of temple building, an enigma known to us as the Osirian. The Osirian of Abydos. If a single site could encapsulate the fascination for lost origins in ancient Egypt, it would be the Osirian in the sacred city of Abydos. Often spelled as Osirian or Osirion, this subterranean construction lies behind the Temple of Seti. Blending into the temple complex, but possessing a design so distinct that many researchers have long suspected it dates from a much earlier era. Discovered in 1902 by archaeologists Flinders Petrie and Margaret Murray, the Osirian was initially overshadowed by the grandeur of Seti I's surface temple. Yet as excavation progressed, a more intriguing picture emerged. Massive blocks of red granite assembled in a starkly minimalist megalithic style were found far below the foundations of the more modern temple. What strikes visitors immediately is the austerity and precision of the design. Gigantic stones, some weighing tens of tons, form the walls of a central hall, which is encircled by a moat-like channel. The roof, now largely collapsed, would once have been composed of correspondingly huge granite slabs, creating an enclosed subterranean chamber reminiscent of primeval sanctuaries. Unlike typical Egyptian temples covered with hieroglyphic texts and colorful carvings, the Osirian is shockingly bare. No reliefs, no inscriptions, just the imposing presence of colossal stone surfaces carefully joined together. This emptiness has fueled speculation that the structure predates the language and iconography of the dynastic period. Mainstream Egyptology often classifies the Osirian as a cult center dedicated to the deity Osiris, where the waters might symbolically mirror the primeval waters of creation. The presence of water channels underscores themes of rebirth and resurrection, central concepts in Osirian mythology. Yet alternative researchers such as John Anthony West, Graham Hancock, and others argue that the Osirian's architectural features do not align with construction techniques typical of the New Kingdom. They note that the megalithic style more closely resembles the earliest phases of Egypt's monumental building tradition seen in sites like the Valley Temple next to the Sphinx at Giza. If it is indeed from a far older period, then it raises the question of what advanced knowledge or organizational power existed at the dawn of Egyptian civilization, or even earlier. An additional puzzle concerns the elevation of the Osirian. It sits significantly lower than the Temple of Seti I, as though the desert sands had buried it over centuries. Water constantly seeps in, creating challenges for archaeologists who struggle to explore its deepest sections. The watery environment suggests that the Osirian may have been deliberately designed around natural springs or aquifers, possibly serving a ritual function tied to the flooding of the Nile. However, the precise engineering behind this remains obscure. Some scholars speculate on the existence of channels connecting the structure to the Nile, while others see evidence that the Nile's course has shifted over millennia, inadvertently submerging the site. No definitive inscriptions verify the original date of construction, leaving specialists to rely on circumstantial evidence such as pottery shards, architectural parallels, and the composition of the stone blocks. Despite its official classification within the reign of Seti, 13th century BCE, the Osirian remains a tantalizing question mark in the annals of Egyptology. Whether we accept it as a unique example of late New Kingdom architecture or a relic from a primordial era, the structure compels us to consider that beneath the sands of the pharaoh's empire may lie even older chapters of the human story, awaiting patient uncovering by future generations. Ram-Setu, bridging myth and geology. Venturing eastward, we move from a sunken sanctuary in Egypt to an unusual causeway bridging the coasts of India and Sri Lanka. Commonly referred to as Ram-Setu or Adam's Bridge, this 48-kilometer chain of limestone shoals stretches across the shallow Pok Strait, appearing in satellite images as a faint line interrupting the ocean's continuity. Ancient Hindu tradition holds that this formation is the very bridge constructed by Prince Rama and his army of Vanaras, often described as monkey warriors, to cross the sea in pursuit of his abducted wife, Sita. This epic narrative is recounted in the Ramayana, one of the foremost Sanskrit epics that significantly shapes South Asian cultural identity. Seen through the lens of mainstream science, Ram-Setu is typically described as a natural formation, a relic of lower sea levels that existed thousands of years ago. Geologists point to the coral reefs and sandbars in the region which may have formed over millennia of sedimentation and wave action. Yet certain anomalies in the dating of these geological layers intrigue researchers who suspect human involvement. For instance, one commonly cited finding is that the upper layers of stone appear older up to 7,000 years than the sand beneath, which is around 4,000 years old. Critics argue that storms, tides, and other natural processes could easily deposit older coral or pumice on newer sand layers. Believers, however, interpret this as a clue that the stones might have been deliberately placed, paralleling the Ramayana tradition that the bridge was built with floating stones inscribed with Rama's name. Beyond the geological puzzle, Ram-Setu occupies a central role in religious and cultural discourse. In 2005, a plan known as the Sethusamudram Shipping Canal Project proposed dredging part of the shoal to create a navigable route for large ships. This prompted public outcry from many devout Hindus, environmentalists, and political groups who insisted that destroying Ram-Setu would be tantamount to desecrating sacred heritage. The controversy reached India's Supreme Court, which was presented with archaeological and historical studies about the site's origins. The Archaeological Survey of India ultimately stated there was no proof that the formation was man-made, a finding that angered many who see the structure as a tangible link to the Ramayana. As with other contested sites that mix cultural identity and scientific inquiry, objectivity can be challenging to maintain. On one hand, the existence of the Ramayana for millennia, along with local lore about the Bridge of Rama, undeniably influences how communities perceive Ram-Setu. On the other hand, geological analyses rarely yield simple, unanimous conclusions, leaving room for ambiguous interpretations. Some proponents of alternative timelines claim that advanced civilizations thrived in the region well before recorded history, using sophisticated engineering to create causeways and docks for maritime trade. Yet no direct archaeological evidence like building tools, inscriptions, or unambiguously placed stone blocks has been found to confirm such large-scale human-engineered construction. Thus, Ram Setu rests at the nexus of faith, national pride, myth, and science, defying easy categorization. Whether one sees it as a geological oddity steeped in centuries of legend or a literal relic of an epic age, the formation underscores how heritage and scientific narratives often intersect, weaving a story that continues to shape cultural policy, environmental stewardship, and personal belief. The Karnak stones, Europe's ancient alignments, moving on from the Indian Ocean to the rugged shores of northwestern France. We encounter another phenomenon cloaked in prehistory, the Karnak stones in Brittany. Spread across several kilometers, these rows of standing stones or menhirs are among the world's largest and most enigmatic megalithic complexes. Unlike the monolithic circles at Stonehenge, Karnak boasts lines upon lines of upright stones, numbering over 3,000, stretching from horizon to horizon across the rolling countryside. From a distance, they can appear like an ancient army locked in position, silent witnesses to a vanished world. Archaeologists date the Karnak alignments to the Neolithic period, roughly 4500 to 3300 BCE, meaning they predate the Egyptian pyramids and rival the earliest known monumental architectures worldwide. The sheer number of stones and their consistent placement raise questions about how such a large-scale project was orchestrated by a society that presumably had only rudimentary tools and limited social stratification. Transporting stones, each weighing several tons without the wheel and over uneven terrain, would require sophisticated logistics, implying a coordinated effort across multiple generations. The purpose behind this vast enterprise, however, remains elusive. Various theories attempt to explain why the ancient Bretons undertook such a massive undertaking. Early antiquarians claimed the stones were tomb markers or battle memorials, shaped by Celtic or even Roman influences. Others proposed that the alignment served an astronomical function akin to an observatory, precisely calculating solstices, equinoxes, or lunar cycles. Indeed, some stones may correlate with seasonal sunrises or star alignments, though the relationship is far from definitive. Another possibility is that they demarcated territorial boundaries or served as ceremonial pathways, processional routes along which prehistoric peoples performed rituals. Local legends are no less captivating. A popular tale suggests that the stones are the remains of a Roman legion turned to stone by Merlin, linking Karnak to Arthurian lore. Meanwhile, some locals have believed that dancing fairies or magical forces animate the stones at night. Such folklore, once considered mere superstition, now provides anthropological clues about how ancient monuments are continually woven into the cultural psyche. Modern investigations reveal that many stones have been relocated over the centuries, some repurposed for building materials, roads, or even fences. This complicates efforts to map the original layout or decode any potential pattern. Recent developments in non-invasive archaeological methods like ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR offer hope that deeper secrets about how the stones were placed or what they once marked might emerge. Still, the region's centuries-long human history means that each new generation has added or removed layers of significance. Despite partial destruction and extensive study, the Karnak stones remain tantalizingly inscrutable. They stand as silent yet colossal witnesses to a society advanced enough to shape the landscape on an epic scale. much like Sacsayhuaman in Peru, Karnak, underscores humanity's drive to mold earth and stone into purposeful arrangements, a drive that in turn challenges modern assumptions about the capabilities of so-called primitive cultures. Whether interpreted as an astronomical code, a religious domain, or a social gathering place, Karnak demands that we confront the possibility of a prehistoric worldview far more complex than previously imagined. The Al-Ubaid figurines, reptilian echoes from Mesopotamia. Continuing our global trek into the ancient unknown, we arrive in Mesopotamia, often hailed as the cradle of civilization. Yet not every artifact from this storied region fits neatly into the standard historical narrative. One of the most perplexing examples is the series of Al-Ubaid figurines discovered in southern Iraq at the archaeological site of Tel al-Ubaid. These small clay statues dated to the Ubaid period, roughly 500–4000 BCE, depict beings with elongated reptilian heads, bulbous eyes, and slender bodies. Some appear male, others female, while still others cradle infants with similarly serpentine features. At first glance, these figurines might be mistaken for stylized humans or mythological creatures. However, their reptilian traits are so pronounced that they raise immediate questions about their symbolic intent. Scholars generally interpret the figurines as representations of deities or spiritual intermediaries. Since the Ubaid culture predates the rise of Sumerian city-states, there is little in the written record to clarify the pantheon these statues might have belonged to, or the rituals in which they were employed. Excavators found the figurines in graves and beneath house floors, suggesting they served a protective or religious function closely tied to fertility, prosperity, or ancestral veneration. A compelling dimension to the enigma is that neighboring cultures like the Sumerians produced plenty of figurative art, yet rarely depicted deities or humans as reptilian. While Sumerian myth includes some half-human, half-serpent beings, e.g. the creator god, Enki, is sometimes depicted with serpentine symbolism, the Al-Ubaid figurines stand apart distinctly more reptilian than any recognized anthropomorphic deity of the later era. Could they represent a totemic link to water or the marshy environment of southern Mesopotamia? Or might they symbolize a lineage of primal gods predating the classical pantheon? Unsurprisingly, fringe theories abound. Some propose that the figurines constitute physical evidence of an alien or reptilian race that once interacted with early Mesopotamian peoples, an idea reminiscent of theories linking the Sumerian Anunnaki to extraterrestrial origins. While mainstream academia dismisses such speculation, it underlines our collective fascination with any artifact that defies convenient classification. It is worth remembering that the Ubaid period saw significant advancements in agriculture, pottery, and settlement building in Mesopotamia. This cultural fluorescence might have included novel religious or mythological concepts that simply did not carry forward into later historical epochs, or did so in fragments leading to confusion among modern observers. Interestingly, many of the figurines were found broken. While some damage can be attributed to the passage of millennia, there are hints of deliberate ritual destruction, a practice seen in other ancient cultures where symbolic objects are ceremonially killed at the end of their use. If so, the dismantling of these reptilian effigies might reflect a transformation in religious practice or an intentional severance from older cultic traditions. Sadly, ongoing conflicts and looting in Iraq have disrupted further research, with some figurines disappearing into the black market. As a result, the puzzle of who exactly these figurines represent and what precise role they played in the spiritual life of the Ubaid people remains partially obscured behind the shifting sands of both time and geopolitics. From the Osirians' megalithic underworld to Ram Setu's contested causeway, from the silent regiments of Karnak's menhirs to the eerie reptilian figurines of Al-Ubaid, each of these enigmas underscores how prehistoric wonders can endure and perplex long after their creators have vanished. We find ourselves grappling with more than just piles of stone or shards of pottery. These sites and artifacts beckon us toward lost cosmologies, defunct building techniques, and symbolic languages that may remain forever out of reach. While mainstream scholarship provides frameworks to interpret them, be they for ritual navigation, commemoration, or religious worship, some mysteries persist precisely because they cannot be pinned down to any single explanation. Nor are these puzzles static. Political climates shift, seas rise or recede, local communities relocate, and new technologies emerge that allow fresh forms of analysis, whether through drone mapping, 3D modeling, or advanced radiometric dating. In some instances, the secrets become more elusive with time as erosion, looting, or infrastructural projects dismantle critical evidence. The controversies, like those swirling around the protection of Ram Setu or the appropriation of Karnak stones for modern construction, demonstrate how heritage is not just about the past. It influences present-day identity and, in some cases, shapes future societal choices. Of course, the debate over authenticity dating and significance remains lively. Every once in a while, a spectacular new claim arises, like that of a newly deciphered Phistos disk, or rumors of more sunken structures near Rock Lake that re-energizes public interest. Yet the weight of scientific scrutiny eventually steps in separating carefully gathered data from leaps of fantasy. This dynamic interplay of open-minded curiosity and diligent methodology is what drives the field of archaeology, ensuring that even the strangest findings are subjected to rational analysis. When that analysis fails to provide a conclusive answer, the story expands to accommodate questions that might remain unanswered for decades or centuries. In turning the page to Part 3, we continue to widen our scope this time, looking at lines drawn across vast landscapes, subterranean labyrinths that predate the pyramids, and more submerged legends said to hide entire stone cities. From the Bolivian high plateau to the lush Amazon basin and finally to the depths of a Wisconsin lake, these next 4 mysteries break conventional molds of how ancient people interacted with their environments. Some of these sites appear to be the work of large communities orchestrating land art on a scale that baffles modern eyes. Others hint at ritual spaces that could transform our notion of Stone Age spirituality. They may also overlap with the lost city trope we find in global legends, from Atlantis to Shambhala. Stories that continue to spark imaginations. As you reflect on the many unanswered questions in Part 2, consider how even the best documented civilizations can harbor secrets that challenge our modern worldview. These revelations prove that our planet's ancient inhabitants were often more inventive, motivated, and interconnected than we give them credit for. Join me now in Part 3 as we delve further into the labyrinth of hidden histories, exploring lines etched into Bolivian plains an underground Maltese temple that defies easy categorization. Geoglyphs in the Amazon that changed our view of the rainforest and the rumored pyramids beneath a tranquil American lake. The final leg of our odyssey into the unknown awaits. Landscapes etched with secrets and sunken worlds. Having journeyed from cryptic scripts on clay discs to megalithic walls perched high above the Andes and from submerged causeways off the Indian coast to reptilian figurines that challenge our perception of Mesopotamian art, we now turn to our final set of 4 mysteries. Each one in its own way exemplifies how ancient cultures seem to have possessed creative or technical abilities far beyond the reach of modern expectations, especially given the rudimentary tools and limited infrastructures we often ascribe to them. In Part 3, we look first at the Sajama lines in Bolivia, vast geoglyphs etched into the Altiplano that extend across the terrain in unnervingly straight lines. If the Nazca lines of Peru are famous for their animal figures, the Sajama lines are equally astonishing for their sheer scale and the meticulous precision that keeps them perfectly linear over significant distances. Next, we descend to Malta's Hal Saflieni Hypogeum, one of the oldest underground temples in the world, complete with acoustically resonant chambers and prehistoric art. The fact that this Neolithic site remains so little understood after more than a century of investigation underscores our tendency to underestimate the complexity of Stone Age societies. From there, we shift our focus to the Brazilian earth geoglyphs, sometimes termed the Acre geoglyphs. Initially hidden beneath dense Amazon rainforest, these enormous geometric patterns have only come to light in recent decades as deforestation revealed their outlines. Their discovery demands that we reevaluate the notion that the Amazon was entirely wild and sparsely inhabited. Instead, it appears to have been home to a civilization or network of communities capable of large-scale land engineering. Finally, we return to North America to consider the Rock Lake Pyramids of Wisconsin, a story that merges glacial geology, local legends, and repeated claims from divers who believe they have seen symmetrical, human-made structures on the lake's bottom. As with so many alleged sunken monuments around the world, conclusive evidence remains elusive. Yet the persistent rumors and partial sonar scans remain enough to keep the legend alive and the debate going. Before we delve into each site, it is worth pausing to acknowledge the broader implications. These 4 mysteries offer us a chance to reflect on how ancient peoples did not merely adapt to their environments but actively transformed them. Etching lines across open plains, carving subterranean temples, sculpting geoglyphs across jungles, and possibly building in flood-prone lake regions. The extraordinary scale or artistry of these undertakings may be difficult to reconcile with conventional timelines that posit a slow, laborious progression from primitive to sophisticated. By the time we finish, we will see anew how humans have long been capable of conceptualizing projects that defy linear or modest expectations. In exploring these sites, we also wrap up the central questions that have guided our entire 3-part journey. Are we missing vast segments of ancient knowledge? How much of the historical narrative rests on incomplete or biased evidence? And what does it truly mean to be advanced in technology, social organization, or worldview? Let us begin by traveling to the foot of Bolivia's highest volcano, Sajama, where thousands of meticulous lines scratch a staggering record into the earth itself. The Sajama lines of Bolivia, high on Bolivia's Altiplano Plateau, in the presence of the towering Nevado Sajama volcano, lies a network of geoglyphs so immense that it dwarfs more famous examples like the Nazca lines of Peru. Known collectively as the Sajama lines, these straight and narrow paths crisscross the landscape, forming one of the largest examples of land art anywhere in the world. They were first noted by Western explorers in the early 20th century, but local Aymara communities long recognized them as part of their heritage. In total, it is believed that tens of thousands of these lines stretch across an area that may span over 22,000 square kilometers, each one etched into the sun-baked surface with a consistency and precision that continues to baffle modern observers. What makes these lines so unique is their uncanny straightness. They often run uninterrupted over hills, valleys, and rivers, maintaining a linear trajectory for distances of tens of kilometers. Where some might expect the lines to meander to avoid topographical obstacles, they rarely deviate, preserving a near-perfect path. The consistent width of the lines, ranging from 1 to 3 meters, adds another dimension of mystery, suggesting that their creators had a keen sense of geometry or surveying ability. Yet no advanced measuring tools have been found at any relevant archaeological sites. Scholars debate the origins and purpose of the Sajama lines, with estimates on their age varying widely. Some believe they may span back to 1000 BCE, while others date their initial creation to more recent eras around the 13th to 15th centuries, during or before the rise of the Inca Empire in the region. Further complicating matters is the fact that local oral traditions attribute them to a series of communal practices, annual pilgrimages, religious processions, or a form of caminos, rituals, ritual pathways connecting sacred shrines. The lines often align with notable landmarks, such as mountaintops or ancient burial towers, called chulpas, supporting the idea that they may have functioned as spiritual or ceremonial routes. Despite growing interest and some survey work using drones and satellite imagery, comprehensive field research on the Sajama lines remains challenging. The harsh environment at high altitude, combined with limited research funding, prevents large-scale excavations or mapping projects. As a result, the lines have not been studied to the extent of other geoglyphic phenomena in South America. Local communities sometimes express concern that too much exposure will attract destructive tourism, eroding the cultural context and the physical lines themselves. Still, the Sajama lines serve as a testament to the remarkable endeavors of ancestral Andean societies, whose motivations, whether religious devotion, socio-political structure, or pure artistry, played out on a massive geographical canvas. While modern eyes might see them as a single art project, the lines may actually be the layered product of multiple generations, each renewing or expanding an inherited tradition. The result is an awe-inspiring mosaic that remains visible even from satellite images, quietly proclaiming the enduring synergy between sacred belief, communal identity, and the landscape itself. The Hal Saflieni Hypogeum in Malta. A world away from Bolivia's open skies, hidden below the bustling modern streets of Paula in Malta, stands a prehistoric marvel known as the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum. Widely recognized as the oldest underground temple complex on Earth, it was accidentally discovered in 1902 by workers digging a cistern. When they broke through a subterranean chamber, They revealed a complex that would soon stun archaeologists and historians with its antiquity scale and mysterious acoustics. Carved from Malta's soft limestone, the hypogeum extends through 3 distinct levels over an area of roughly 500 square meters. Archaeologists estimate it was in use from around 3300 BCE to 2400 BCE, placing its origins earlier than the Giza pyramids in Egypt. Throughout these caverns, chambers vary in size and function. The uppermost level features small niches, some used for burials, while the middle level houses ceremonial halls adorned with spiral motifs painted in red ochre. The deepest level, at times inaccessible due to flooding and conservation concerns, contains communal burial vaults where over 7,000 human skeletons have been found. Yet it is not merely the magnitude of this necropolis that captivates researchers. The Oracle Room, for instance, is famed for its unique acoustic properties. Low-frequency sounds resonate through the interconnected chambers, creating an otherworldly echo that modern sound engineers still find perplexing. Some speculate that ancient Maltese priests or priestesses used chanting or drumming to induce altered states of consciousness during rituals, harnessing frequencies that reverberate through the limestone to intensify spiritual experiences. This ties into broader studies comparing megalithic sites across the world, such as Newgrange in Ireland, where certain frequencies, notably around 110 Hz, produce psychoacoustic effects. Along with the sheer volume of skeletal remains, the hypogeum yielded numerous artifacts, such as pottery shards, obsidian blades, and the famous Sleeping Lady figurine, a small statuette depicting a voluptuous figure lying on her side, perhaps representative of fertility or spiritual rest. Depictions of bull horns and other symbolic designs also suggest a possible link to fertility rites or ancestor worship. Unfortunately, not all finds have survived unscathed. Some elongated human skulls reportedly discovered at the site vanished from museum collections, fueling speculation about cover-ups or archaic cranial deformation practices that defy conventional timelines. Despite over a century of research, countless questions remain. Who constructed the hypogeum, and how did they move and carve such large amounts of rock? Why did they choose to excavate a multi-leveled structure in one of the densest limestone pockets on Malta? And how did this culture sustain itself in an era preceding most known forms of advanced agriculture or metal tools? Archaeologists have noted that the same culture responsible for the hypogeum also built remarkable megalithic temples across Malta, such as Hagar Kim and Menajdra, indicating a highly organized Neolithic society. Today, the hypogeum is a strictly protected UNESCO World Heritage Site with tightly controlled visitor access to ensure its preservation. While only a fraction of the complex is open to the public, the site continues to inspire new theoretical models regarding prehistoric religion, communal memory, and architectural planning. That a society from over 5,000 years ago could design acoustically resonant subterranean sanctuaries and deposit thousands of their dead in structured rituals argues for a deeper level of social complexity than many textbooks once conceded. Emerging technologies might one day shed more light on these ancient chambers, but for now, the Hal Saflieni hypogeum remains an enigma, whispering through the stone walls of its echoing corridors. The Amazon geoglyphs of Brazil. Traveling to another lush setting, we arrive in the Brazilian state of Acre, part of the southwestern Amazon region where sweeping earth geoglyphs, also referred to as the Acre geoglyphs, have come to light in recent decades. Initially obscured by dense rainforest, these geometric patterns of trenches, ditches, and earthen mounds began to emerge as agricultural clearing expanded, stripping away the canopy. Scientists flying overhead noticed shapes ranging from enormous squares and circles to more elaborate compositions linked by causeways. The discovery challenged long-held beliefs about the Amazon. Conventional wisdom once maintained that the rainforest environment was too harsh and resource-limited for large settled populations prior to European contact. Yet these geoglyphs, some dating from 1000 BCE to the medieval period, suggest that indigenous societies not only thrived in these areas, but also possessed the organizational skills and manpower to design vast public works. Archaeologists have now identified over 400 such sites, though many remain unstudied. Some geoglyphs are hundreds of meters across, indicating extensive labor. In some instances, earthen embankments stand well above human height, requiring entire communities to excavate and shape the land for these colossal forms. One of the central mysteries lies in their purpose. Unlike the Nazca lines, which appear to form recognizable animals and symbolic shapes, the Amazon geoglyphs are primarily geometric squares, rectangles, circles, or elliptical enclosures, occasionally lined up in neat rows or connected by causeways. This geometric regularity leads some researchers to propose that they served as ceremonial gathering places, ritual spaces, or even defensive outposts. Clusters of pottery shards, stone tools, and evidence of sustained habitation hint that these were not merely ritual signs, but possibly the centers of broader communities, akin to proto-urban settlements. While some of these sites appear to align with astronomical events like solstices and equinoxes, others defy simple explanation. Moreover, the presence of terra preta, man-made fertile soil in certain locales, suggests that inhabitants actively cultivated the environment, employing advanced horticultural methods that integrated with the local ecosystem. This revelation disrupts the notion of the untouched Amazon, revealing an anthropogenic landscape that was shaped and managed by sophisticated cultures. Tragically, modern deforestation threatens to erase this invaluable record of pre-Columbian ingenuity. As ranchers and loggers clear the land, the shallow earthworks risk being leveled or deteriorated by heavy machinery and erosion. The Brazilian government and international institutions have begun to recognize the site's significance, conducting aerial surveys and pushing for protections. In sum, the acre geoglyphs serve as a poignant reminder that the Amazon, far from being a pristine wilderness inhabited by scattered hunter-gatherers, was in many areas a cultural mosaic of societies capable of dramatic landscape modification. Their geometric earthworks convey a story of communal collaboration, environmental adaptation, and possibly a spiritual worldview expressed in massive shapes etched into the red soil. While deeper excavations and improved preservation measures may unveil more about their builders' daily lives, the geoglyphs already prompt a radical revision of how we conceive both the Amazon's ecological history and South America's pre-Columbian cultural tapestry. The Rock Lake Pyramids in Wisconsin. Shifting again, we move from the steamy Amazon basin to a quieter, temperate corner of the United States Rock Lake in southern Wisconsin. Just a few kilometers from the well-known Aztalan State Park, an archaeological site featuring ancient earthen mounds lies this modest glacially formed lake. Yet local legends and occasional scientific expeditions claim that beneath its placid surface, one can find pyramids or stepped stone structures that date back centuries or even millennia. The mystery began earning public attention in the early 20th century when residents and divers recounted tales of stone formations on the lake floor. One particularly influential voice was that of diver Victor Taylor in the 1930s, who asserted that he saw massive mortar-like blocks forming what looked like a three-tiered pyramid. Over the decades, divers using improved technology have reported glimpses of symmetrical structures, sometimes measuring up to 18 or 20 meters across. Occasional sonar surveys have also picked up anomalies consistent with large, regular shapes. However, the question of authenticity remains hotly contested. The region around Rock Lake was shaped by glacial action roughly 10,000 years ago, leaving behind extensive deposits of rounded stones and uneven lake bottoms. Mainstream geologists suggest that these so-called pyramids could be natural rock piles, while proponents of the pyramid theory argue that they are clearly engineered or stacked. Even more controversial are claims linking these submerged formations to Aztlan's ancient Mississippian or Middle Woodland culture, which flourished between the 9th and 13th centuries CE. Some enthusiasts posit that Rock Lake once stood at a lower level, allowing early inhabitants to construct stone structures, perhaps altars for ceremonial use, before rising waters eventually submerged them. Complicating matters is a dearth of definitive artifacts. No carved inscriptions, pottery, or preserved wood has been conclusively linked to these underwater shapes. Nor have thorough academic investigations produced peer-reviewed studies confirming man-made architecture. Skeptics point out that many pyramid sightings under the water remain anecdotal, subject to confirmation, bias, poor visibility, and the illusions that can arise in dim aquatic settings. Furthermore, high sedimentation rates and algae can obscure sonar returns, making it difficult to interpret the data conclusively. Yet the legend persists. Books such as The Lost Pyramids of Rock Lake by Frank Joseph Collins capture the public imagination, fueling tourism and local folklore. Some believe the structures could predate even the Mississippians, speculating about a lost civilization akin to those that built step pyramids in Mesoamerica. Others connect them to the legends of an ancient city once located near present-day Lake Mills, forging an American parallel to the mythical sunken lands of Atlantis. Whether the so-called Rock Lake pyramids are indeed man-made or just a geological quirk remains unresolved. What is clear, however, is that the site continues to serve as a magnet for explorers and dreamers. In this sense, the story of Rock Lake encapsulates the broader human tendency to discover, interpret, and sometimes mythologize the hidden corners of our world, where the boundary between nature and culture is often blurred beyond easy distinction. Broader reflections on landscape transformation, taking these four sites together, the Sajama Lines, the Halsaflieni, Hypogeum, the Amazon geoglyphs, and the rumored Rock Lake pyramids, we see a common thread: the reshaping of natural landscapes into something deeply meaningful. Whether it was by carving subterranean temples in Malta's limestone, drawing geometric trenches across Amazonian plains, or allegedly stacking stones in a Wisconsin lake, these ancient or possibly semi-ancient initiatives underscore humanity's enduring drive to leave a profound imprint on the environment. In Bolivia, the immense scale of the Sajama Lines is key to their mystique. A network of roads or sacred pathways that collectively span thousands of kilometers is no small achievement, particularly without modern surveying tools. Similarly, the hypogeum in Malta illustrates another form of ambition going underground. Rather than erecting megalithic monuments in the open air, a hallmark of many contemporary cultures, the Maltese people of the 4th millennium BCE carved out intricately designed chambers, replete with elaborately painted walls and possibly engineered acoustic phenomena. The Amazon geoglyphs challenge the romanticized notion of the rainforest as untouched. Instead, we find an environment that indigenous groups manipulated extensively. They built enormous geometric patterns, often in alignment with each other, or natural landmarks, demonstrating advanced knowledge of geometry, hydrology, and agriculture. This complicates the idea of virgin forests and shows that human-environment relationships can be deeply integrated and highly systematic. As for Rock Lake, whether the submerged formations are natural or cultural, the very persistence of the legend attests to our fascination with hidden histories, particularly those lurking underwater. Submerged landscapes stir imaginations around the globe, from the Bimini Road in the Bahamas to the rumored city beneath Lake Titicaca in the Andes. Often, lakes and seas become repositories for myths of cataclysm, lost civilizations, or sudden geological shifts that drastically reshaped ancient settlements. In broader terms, these projects serve as cultural anchors where societies invest tremendous effort to inscribe their worldviews onto the natural environment. Sometimes the impetus might have been purely practical, like ensuring farmland or directing pilgrims along safe routes. In other cases, the motive seems spiritual or symbolic, aiming to connect the living with cosmic forces, ancestral spirits, or the cycles of nature. At times, lines between practical and sacred goals blur. Perhaps the same ditch that demarcated farmland was also a ceremonial boundary. Additionally, these sites reflect the complicated nature of archaeological interpretation. Without sufficient written records, artifacts, or definitive carbon dating samples, researchers must rely on best-fit scenarios. For each site, mainstream academics often propose conservative or multi-factor explanations, while alternative theorists push more radical viewpoints, be it extraterrestrial contact, remnants of an impossibly advanced culture, or remnants of mythical migrations. The friction between these perspectives can spur fresh investigations or hamper collaboration, depending on how openly scholars and enthusiasts are willing to exchange data. Ultimately, these large-scale manipulations of land, whether certain or speculative, invite us to re-evaluate how we perceive ancient groups. They challenge us to move beyond stereotypes of primitive or unskilled. Instead, they reveal societies that had the capacity to organize labor, conceptualize enormous construction or earth-moving projects, and sustain communal vision across generations. Looking at such achievements, we can only wonder what knowledge or intangible motivations guided these efforts, and how many more examples might still be obscured by forests, deserts, or the depth of the sea. Final conclusion and farewell. As our expansive three-part exploration draws to a close, we can reflect on the profound diversity of human achievement showcased by these 12 mysteries. From the Phistos disk and its unknown script to the subterranean majesty of the Hal Saflieni, Hypogeum, from the improbable technologies of the Ulfbert sword to the precise, astonishing lines carved across Bolivia's high plains, The evidence suggests that ancient and medieval peoples were neither as uniform nor as simplistic as older historical models often imply. Each puzzle we have examined entices us to remain open to the possibility that entire chapters of history lie waiting to be uncovered or revisited with fresh perspectives. Throughout parts 1, 2, and 3, we have also noted how many factors obstruct our quest for answers. Deforestation threatens to erase the Amazon's geoglyphic record before it can be fully studied. Rising tourism pressures sites like the Osirian and the Karnak stones risking their preservation. Political instability, looting, and bureaucratic hurdles hamper more rigorous fieldwork in places such as Mesopotamia. On top of that, financial and technological constraints limit the number of thorough digs that can be conducted each year. These complications amplify the sense of urgency among archaeologists and historians who recognize that once lost physical evidence can rarely be recovered. But all is not frustration. Modern innovations in archaeological science, such as ground-penetrating radar DNA analysis, satellite mapping, LiDAR scanning, and advanced dating techniques are revealing details that were previously invisible. For instance, Ropkund Lake in the Himalayas yielded startling DNA patterns distinguishing multiple ethnic groups who died there centuries apart. The Amazon geoglyphs, once nearly invisible beneath jungle foliage, have been captured via aerial surveys and deforestation vantage points, allowing researchers to piece together patterns from above. Thus, while each site remains partially veiled, the pace of discovery and technology is poised to yield new insights if investigations continue ethically and sustainably. Moreover, these riddles transcend mere academic interest. They speak to deeper philosophical and even spiritual questions about who we are and where we come from. They prompt us to acknowledge that the line between history and myth can be razor thin, and that scientific reasoning must often coexist with cultural narratives grounded in faith legend or ancestral memory. For many communities around the globe, these ancient places are living heritage sites integral to identity belief systems and a sense of belonging. As outsiders, we can study them, marvel at them, and propose theories, but the local cultural context remains crucial for safeguarding them and honoring their significance. In closing, these 12 mysteries stand as testaments to the enduring creativity, resilience, and complexity of humankind, attributes that span continents and epochs. They encourage us to keep questioning, to remain humble about the gaps in our current knowledge, and to celebrate the diversity of ways in which societies throughout time have confronted existential questions by leaving behind enduring works of art, architecture, and sacred spaces. Perhaps the greatest lesson is this: the past is not a static tableau, but a dynamic puzzle that continues to speak, beckoning each new generation to listen more closely and dig a little deeper, not just into the earth, but into our shared human story. With that, our 3-part voyage through some of history's most enduring enigmas reaches its end. Feel free to share your reflections, theories, or wonderment at these sites. After all, it is this spirit of inquiry and dialogue that keeps the quest for the past alive. May the mysteries we have encountered remind us that the frontier of discovery is far from closed, and that the next great revelation might be lying in wait beneath the sands in the shadows of a temple, or at the bottom of an unassuming lake, simply awaiting a curious mind to uncover it.